Hello, welcome back. My name is Becca Elliott D. Moose, and today we're going to talk about Studio Ghibli's newest film, The Boy and the Heron. Just a warning before we begin, we will be talking about the movie in length, and therefore there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go ahead and pause this video and then go see it, and then come back and we can compare notes. It'll be fun. Okay, you've been warned. Let's get into it. I have thoughts. First off, let's do a little bit of a summary of the film. This story follows a young boy named Mahito, and the story starts out with Mahito losing his mother in a hospital fire. His father, who is an aviation engineer, then remarries his mother's sister, Natsuko, who I guess is his aunt, and now is his mother. They then evacuate Tokyo to the countryside and live in a very large house with a lot of little old ladies. Mahito, who is still dealing with the grief of losing his mother, struggles in his new surroundings. He feels ostracized from the rest of his classmates at school. He gets into a lot of fights. He's cold and distant towards Natsuko, but then also Natsuko tells him that she's pregnant. So she's having his sibling, but also his cousin? It's a little bit understandable. He's a tiny bit confused. And on top of all of that, he's dealing with this pesky gray heron that just won't leave him alone. One day he decides to confront the pesky heron, and after pursuing the heron, he ends up at this ruined, sealed off tower, which his granduncle apparently made. He was an architect. He is warned, though, not to venture near the tower. Upon returning from the tower, he picks up some of the feathers from the heron, and with those feathers, he makes a bow and arrow. After feeling completely ostracized from the rest of his schoolmates, one day on the way home from school, he picks up a rock and he hurts himself in the head with the rock. Comes home hurt, and he begins to just stay at home and recover. One day while he's recovering, he notices Natsuko going for a walk by the tower. Not thinking anything of it, he continues on with his day. However, later he's informed that Natsuko is ill due to her pregnancy, and that now she is missing, and he goes out to find her. He follows the path she took towards the tower, and who should be at the tower to greet him than that pesky little heron. The heron then taunts Mahito to go inside the tower because he says, "Mahito, your mother is in the tower and she's ill. You should come see her." Mahito, still feeling the loss of his mother, is like, "Okay, I'm gonna go into the tower." He soon finds out, though, that the heron was tricking him, and then he gets mad and he fires the arrow at the heron. The arrow pierces the beak of the heron, and then it is revealed that there is a tiny little man inside the heron. This is a Ghibli movie, and of course there would be a tiny little man inside the heron. The heron, feeling defeated, then takes Mahito inside of the tower to find Natsuko. It's here Mahito encounters a variety of characters. These little bubble spirits that are super duper cute called the Wara Wara. He meets Himi, a young woman that assists him on his journey, and he meets Granduncle, who rules the world as a wizard with great power. Mahito and the heron then infiltrate the castle that is run by a bunch of parakeets because Natsuko is said to be in there. Natsuko, however, refuses to return with Mahito, telling him that she hates him. And it's only until he acknowledges her as mother that she begins to settle down and start to consider escaping with them. Himi, however, is unfortunately captured by the Parakeet King. Yes, these birds have a king, and it's Dave Bautista in the dub, so there you go. And while rescuing Himi from the Parakeet King, Mahito meets Granduncle, who then asks Mahito to take over the job of maintaining the world, explaining that only someone with blood relation and free of malice can do this job. However, Mahito refuses, saying that his injury on the side of his head shows that he is not free of malice. But then Mahito and Natsuko and the heron all escape back to their world, with then the heron telling Mahito that he will eventually forget that this ever happened. The story of The Boy and the Heron had Hayao Miyazaki coming out of retirement to make this story. It's somewhat autobiographical, having some elements of Miyazaki's actual life in this story. Miyazaki's own family had to evacuate Tokyo during the firebombing, and his father was employed by a manufacturing company that made fighter planes. His mother also unfortunately passed away when he was young. Miyazaki wanted to create a protagonist who grapples with inner conflict and insecurity, emphasizing the transformative power that imagination has by overcoming personal challenges, an idea that he gained through one of his favorite books, How Do We Live? So before I get into whether I like the film or not, I have some thoughts about little parts of the film that I want to talk about. One of the first things that I noticed about this film when I watched it was the use of quietness, especially at the beginning of the film. The sound of footsteps in particular, and how quiet, and the use of no soundtrack when they arrive in the countryside was very jarring. Usually in a Studio Ghibli film, when they're walking somewhere, yes, you can hear the footsteps or other sound effects that they're making as they're moving. However, there always seems to be some sort of soundtrack that goes along with it. But there was these very long periods of quiet where all you could hear was the footsteps of them moving. It really did feel like they were in the country, that it was quiet. And how crazy that would have been for Mahito to move from Tokyo, that was constantly filled with sound, to moving to the country where it was incredibly quiet. It really helps you to understand how lonely Mahito must have felt within his own grief. Arriving from Tokyo, his father literally just drops him off with his new aunt slash mother, and she immediately tells him, hey, you're gonna have a sibling, which is also your cousin. That's great. We're also gonna live in this new house, and you're gonna go to a new school that you don't know anybody. See you later. We're gonna leave you alone now. So I feel like the quietness really helps you understand that this boy, he just feels all alone, and you immediately connect to him emotionally. At least for me, that's how I felt. The Heron was also one of my favorite characters in the film. The Heron acts as this sort of intermediary between two worlds, real world and the fantasy world. And this transformation into the Heron being a speaking entity and its connection to this magical tower kind of represents this blurring of the boundaries between reality and the supernatural, reminding us that the extraordinary can happen in the most unexpected places. The Heron's sub voice was by Masaki Suda, and his dub voice was by the Robert Pattinson. And I was super impressed by Robert Pattinson. The dedication that this man put into the character, absolutely fantastic. Up until this point, Robert Pattinson hadn't done voiceover before. But the man came prepared, he came committed, and he completed his voiceover dubbing in 2 freaking days. Stayed true to the tone that Suda bring. However, he also gave the character his own spin as well. I give this man a huge round of applause. He 100% deserves it, and I hope he continues to doing voice acting because he is really, really amazing at it. I mean, Robert Pattinson has now played a wizard, he's played a vampire, he's been Batman, and now he's a Studio Ghibli creature. It's freaking amazing, man. What a resume. Another performance I was truly intrigued to hear was Christian Bale. As we all know, or maybe some of us don't, but now you do, Christian Bale played Howl Pendragon in Howl's Moving Castle.
That's my girl.
That's a classic line. And I was really interested to hear how he was going to differ from Howl for Mahito's father. It was very interesting because it was this split accent between an American accent and his own British accent. And it really fit for this dad character. So, good job, Christian Bale. Again, hit it out of the park. Also, I know when they were advertising this movie, they really pushed the cute little creatures of the little Warawara. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know if I'm saying Warawara correct, but that's what I'm calling them. They were the cute little squishy little characters that were like, ah! You know, those ones, I absolutely love them. They were so cute to see in the film. But one of my favorite creatures in this whole universe was actually the parakeets. I feel like they stole the show. The parakeets were there to symbolize violence within humanity. They were great though. They were absolutely, it was wonderful. Many times the audience in the theater when I saw it laughed at the parakeets. Anytime they came on the scene, we were just all laughing. Overall, I did very much enjoy this movie. However, in terms of a Studio Ghibli film, it wasn't one of my favorites. I did very much enjoy this movie. However, in terms of a Studio Ghibli movie, I felt myself not connecting to it like other Studio Ghibli movies that I've watched. I feel like that's because I've kind of grown accustomed to turning on a Studio Ghibli film for the means of comfort. I think in the last couple of years especially, I've come to appreciate these movies as a comfort movie, and when I go to watch them, I'm going for that. I'm going for that escapism. So watching this movie, it was a little bit of a shock because I didn't feel that comforting feeling watching this movie. I do feel that The Boy and the Heron had elements to it that made you sit with your feelings and reflect on those feelings while you were in the movie. Studio Ghibli films do make me reflect on the world. I think there are messages within the films that I do take with me in day-to-day life, and I do appreciate those messages, but I usually reflect on them after I watch the film. With The Boy and the Heron, I felt that the way the story was being told, it made you deal with those emotions immediately. It made you sit with them. And to me, going into this film, I wasn't quite ready to sit with those emotions. So I am ready for The Boy and the Heron to feel different later, and maybe for me to rate it higher on my ranking of Studio Ghibli films and what I like. But for right now, I think I'm in a place where I come to watch Studio Ghibli films for the escapism, for the comfort. And so that's why this one wasn't one of my favorites. That being said, this in no way is saying that this was not an amazing movie. Overcoming challenges through imagination is a beautiful message, and one that I hold close to my heart. And so I really appreciated that about the movie. I mean, our imagination is a powerful tool, and sometimes, yes, it can be negative and make us believe things that aren't true about ourselves, but it can also be our greatest tool to imagine the infinite possibilities that our life could be. And also a final thought, this movie did not miss on the magicalness of nature. Studio Ghibli films always make nature look beautiful and really represent it well and remind us that natural beauty is all around us, and we need to make sure to sometimes ground ourselves in that. And this movie did not miss on the mark of that at all. And as someone that really loves birds, I really just appreciated all of the different types of birds that were animated throughout this movie. I really, really loved it. And that's it. That's all I have to say about The Boy and the Heron. Let me know in the comments if you've seen the film and what you've thought about it. And let me know if you'd like me to review any other Studio Ghibli films. I don't know, maybe this could be like a nice little series of me like ranking the Studio Ghibli films. I've thought about what my favorite Studio Ghibli film would be, but I'd really like to rewatch them and see what the actual order I would place them as. So if that's something that would interest you, let me know and I'll do it. Until next time, stay cozy. And listen, you've got this. I believe in you. Have a good day.